already recording, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Recording start.
Okay, and the Zoom people can see me? Okay, great. All right. Well, welcome to another morning meditation. Apologies for any delay. And let's all start with 5 minutes of surrender or inquiry. All right. So, think about the level of effort and focus you had, whatever it was, in these last 5 minutes, right? As a baseline, right? That level of effort is what we want to maintain, minimum, right? Throughout. That's the aspiration at all times, right? Because it is very easy, I think, sometimes to think that we're doing the practice during the day sometimes, but actually, it's really just the thought of doing the practice. Oh yeah, I'm not thinking about it really sometimes, but that level of focus, right? It is using your most core attention, whatever is the most focused part of your attention, that should be directed towards the practice if you can. That's the idea, and everything else is background. So there's a story I always tell. I repeat this story again and again, but I'm going to repeat it again for the umpteenth time, which is I think it's someone goes to see King Janaka, right, who is an enlightened king, right, and wants to learn about spirituality and the self from him, right? And the king says, "Oh, I'm very busy during the daytime. Come see me this evening." And so he says, "But I'll have my guards show you around the city." And I told them that they should put a pot of water on your head, and if you spill any of the water while you walk, they'll kill you. So this happens, right? He says, "Come see me in the evening, and I'll talk to you about the self." So then the guy goes around the city, blah, 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 comes back and sees the king in the evening, and the king says, "How do you like the city?" So what does the guy say?
He's too busy thinking of...
Yeah, what city? What city? Exactly, what city? There's no city, right? He's so terrified, right, of spilling any of the water, that the attention becomes focused, right, on the pot, and everything else blacks out. And have you noticed, right, when you're in deep concentration on something, everything in the world blacks out,
Yes.
as if it doesn't exist.
Yes.
That's what that level of focus is what we're trying to do.
All time?
That's the hope, that's the attempt. I know it's really hard, right? But that's the attempt. Yes. That's exactly what is meant by, one of the exact meanings, what is meant by, again, that Gita passage saying that the wise they are awake to the inner world and asleep to the outer world, right? It's this, precisely this. Yeah.
That means the world is not even something you have to entertain anymore.
Yes, exactly. It's there, but you're not paying attention to it. So if you're not paying attention to it, does it exist? It's a good question. You're not trying to kick it out exactly. You're trying to positively focus on something, right? These other things can be there in the background. That's it. There's a great... Not your main focus, exactly.
No, that is the...
Exactly. Because think about, anything else, right? Think about, I don't know, any scientist or artist or whatever it is, right?
Yes.
They're obsessed with whatever they're obsessed with, right? They're thinking about it all the time, right? Einstein was famously super absent-minded, right? He couldn't even remember his telephone number, right? Because he was so one-pointedly focused on what he was interested in, basically. So that level of one-pointed focus, right? Where everything else is whatever, essentially, is what we're aiming for.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that is where the fear comes to let go.
Yes, exactly. Yes. We're used to that world, and we think that we can control it with our attention. Right? That's what it is. We think, if I don't put my attention in a particular way, then the world won't go as I wish it to go, basically. But the reality is the world will go as it goes, regardless, right? Sometimes the way you like, sometimes the way you don't like. Ramana gives he tells a story, he retells a story from the Yoga Vashishta, which is delightful, and also along the same line, right? Where, there is a hunter chasing a deer, okay? And, the deer runs away from the hunter, and the hunter is running after it, and, he doesn't know which way it went, okay? And he sees a rishi, a sage sitting on the ground with his eyes wide open, okay? and the hunter says, "Which way did the deer go?" And the rishi says, I didn't see, I don't know. And the hunter says, well, you're sitting there with your eyes wide open. How could you not see which way the deer went? And the sage says, well, he says something like, those of us who have transcended the ego, we don't see, even though our eyes are open, right? And then Ramana says something interesting. He says, yeah, but someone could ask, but how are you talking to me then? He says, that would miss the point. The point is the attention is not there, right? That's the point. The point is that's an ambiguity. That's the ambiguity of things, right? Does the world exist to that person or doesn't it? Again, it's the same Zen saying, which I mentioned a couple days ago, right? If a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? The answer is not yes or no.
No.
The answer is, it's to point you to this, there's an ambiguity here. If your attention is not there, does something exist? Does it? That's a question, actually. That's a question. This is like the status of Maya. Does it exist? Doesn't it exist? It's neither this nor that, really, exactly, There's a question about it. And again, Yoga Vasishtha saying somewhere else in multiple passages, the one who's engaged in this practice deeply, they will do the activities in their life like a baby half asleep, like a baby half asleep. And Ramana also uses this analogy, the baby. He says, just the way that a baby can be fed in the middle of the night and not really know it in the morning, In that same way, the activities of your life will proceed. So, does the baby know? Doesn't the baby know? It's kind of in between,
Yeah, baby doesn't know at all.
Baby doesn't know at all, you can say. Exactly. Yeah, you can say that. Exactly.
But adult, you should say.
Yeah. Adult knows. I mean, maybe you can say baby had, we can argue the point. But yes, exactly. That's right. Yeah. So, that's what gives freedom, that level of concentration. And that's what also gives bliss, by the way. Bliss comes from concentration, basically. So that's what we want to cultivate, this concentration. It's very blissful. The bliss is not the point, but it is nice. The point is the intensity for its own sake to penetrate through the attachments, and break the obstacles to seeing, basically. All right, let's do one more round of 5 minutes and then we'll take questions about your experiences. Yeah. So I will say one more thing, which is, someone mentioned, I think yesterday or the day before, this idea of zoning out. So we should be clear, even though zoning out has some superficial similarities to a state of intense absorption, it's not at all the same thing. Zoning out really is you're kind of lost in a series of thoughts, basically, which are not the practice, It's not exactly maybe the external world, and so, it may not seem like you may not have the same memory for what's going on, basically. So there's kind of a superficial similarity, because if you're in a state of intense absorption in the practice, you also are not really paying attention to the external world, with your foreground attention. And in a state of zoning out, that's also true, but it's different, because obviously in a state of practice, your focus is very concentrated and very aware, very aware of what it's doing, basically. In zoning out, you kind of lose total awareness, and you're kind of, it's like you're dreaming, basically, in a way. So, all things to be aware of, generally speaking. So anyone want to talk about their experience either the practice of the last 10 minutes, or more generally, how the practice has been going?
So I think it's a keen observation or awareness, I thought. Anything, instead of superficially looking at it, maybe keen observation.
Yeah, keen observation, well, of
the whole thing, the surrounding.
Of your, let's say in self-inquiry,
Yeah.
right? Of the one who's experiencing, right? Of the hunt for that, right? The keenness of that. Is that what you mean? That's the idea?
Yeah,
Yes.
what's behind it's deeper, it's beyond the senses, beyond the keen observation of yourself.
Yeah, see, yes, it is keen, but remember, so we're always looking for, we're not looking directly for the thing that's beyond.
Yeah.
Right, you see that? We're not looking directly for that which is beyond time and space.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We're looking, how would you describe it?
Okay, let everything be around, but keen observation of yourself.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
all
Hunt for.
outside is
Yes.
I do not really like say to whom it happens or nothing of the sort. No, instead let them all float around.
Yeah. Right.
I am not that like.
Where am I? Where am I?
Yes,
Is the
the
point.
keen observation of yourself.
Where am I? Right.
In the midst of all the things superficially
That's right.
floating around you.
That's right. Exactly. You're hunting for yourself. Exactly. And just to be clear, right, I just brought up this beyond, not beyond time and space thing, because just to be clear, right, we are looking for what feels like us right now. What feels like us, you see? So that's not exactly the capital S self. The real self doesn't, the irony is that what feels like us is not us.
Yes.
What is us does not feel like us.
Because we have the whole journey, we have not even thought about that.
Yeah, exactly.
So much busy with this self. So now to remove the focus from this self is what is this?
Yes,
This
exactly.
exercise is all about.
Yes. Stripping away the superficial feelings that are associated with the self. Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
So inquiry and surrender, will it happen side by side? Is happening side by side?
I mean, they're really two views of the same process. You can pick either one. Or you can mix and match. It's totally up to you. They wouldn't usually, you wouldn't say they're both happening side by side. They're like I say, two views of the same process. So you can take the surrender view at any particular point in time, or you can take the self-inquiry view at any particular point in time. They're doing the same thing, basically.
Because when the fear comes, then I want to say, okay, I'm going to surrender.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Sure.
But the inquiry is making that fear because of we are removing the known.
Yeah, right.
To go to the unknown.
Right.
Which is bringing the fear. That's what I am observing.
So for you, yeah, that's great. You can definitely do that. And then you can go back.
I just say, okay, well, this
Great.
is my field, I'm just surrendering.
Yes. I mean, you can 100% do that. And some people find the opposite is useful, right? So some people are, let's say, they may find, a certain degree of a fear arising in surrender because feels like they're letting go of control. And for them, maybe inquiry is helpful in that moment because who is feeling this fear? Who's feeling this fear, right? The fear is fearful because one feels it is my fear. I'm afraid. But then if you look for, well, where is this so-called I? And then you, again, digest the fact that, I don't know. I don't know where this is, right? Then what am I afraid of? Who is afraid exactly? I'm saying I'm so afraid. What do I mean by that? Right? The moment you're confused, now you can't be as frightened. So some people find it the opposite direction useful. So this is, you can go back and forth as is, whatever's helpful for you, basically. Yeah.
I was about to comment about that. I think like before last 2-3 years, I would stick to self-inquiry or surrender. But this time when I started, say sometimes we take a break again, when we come back, it's more motivation to do this practice. So this year when I'm doing, depending upon the situation, my mind is picking up both, like in some situation it is picking up self-inquiry, in some situation, effort, I'm not putting any effort into it.
Just coming up.
Situation it is picking up the technique.
Yes.
So that is, I'm feeling right now that complementary and helpful for me in different situations, whether I'm going for surrender or something.
Yes, definitely.
So that is,
that's great.
Independently, I'm picking up and continuing my journey.
That's great. Yeah, so it is one of the fruits of the practice that as you do it, you'll suddenly find automatically it's picking up in certain situations, which is great, But, really it should be an encouragement, more effort, because the more effort you put in, the more of that you'll get. The more automatic stuff is a product of whatever the effortful parts are, basically.
As you said yesterday, discerning the experience.
Yes, discerning the experiencer, exactly.
Is surrender.
Yes.
And negating yourself is more like a self-inquiry.
Yeah, exactly. That difference is, it's just sides of a coin.
Yeah.
Because, again, in self-inquiry, right, you're looking for yourself. And when you look for yourself, what's happening with the rest of the world? What are you doing with the rest of the world when you look for yourself?
You are rejecting the world.
Exactly. You're ignoring it, right?
Yeah.
Basically, right? And in surrender, what are you doing with the world?
You are rejecting your experience.
Yeah, you're basically ignoring it, right? You're withdrawing your attention, right? So when you take your attention away from the other objects in surrender, you're collecting it into what? Into yourself, right? So it's moving in this direction of the self, right? Or again, like in surrender, if you can view it as I am guarding my willpower, right? I'm keeping it in this deliberately relaxed state, right? Like a flame. There's a flame called my willpower. I'm preventing any wind from blowing it out, right? Yeah. So it's exactly the same thing. Again, it's exactly the same thing. That guarded relaxation equals basically moving attention away from the objects. Because again, any thought that you get lost in is a subtle use of willpower. Because it's a subtle use of focus, basically. When you focus on a thought, it may barely seem like I'm not really using willpower, but you are. You're using a little bit of focus to get lost in that thought. You don't even notice it. Yeah. So keeping that muscle very zealously relaxed. And then obviously if it gets lost, immediately relaxing it again.
So guarding against your experience, guarding against yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You can do it that way, exactly.
Both are surrender as well as self-inquiry.
Yes.
In other words, me with the experience, you are guarding against both of them, with both methods.
Yeah, you're guarding, that's right, you're guarding against being lost in experience in both methods.
That is kind of surrender, maybe.
Well, both, no, see, both are really doing it, right? Because when you hunt for I, right, you're also guarding against being lost in
Yeah,
experience.
correct. That's also, I is
Yeah.
inclusive of that.
Yeah.
And also yesterday you mentioned that the surrender by itself is a complete journey.
Yes, it
What's
is.
that point, Akilesh, can you explain that?
Yeah, because of this exact thing, right? Because when you surrender, right, you are defocusing on all changing phenomena, right? So in that process, you are pulling your attention towards what feels like me. And then as you pull your attention, you're pulling your attention from what feels like not me,
Yeah.
which is the world, towards what feels like me. And then you're repeating the process. When you do this, right, your mind will automatically get subtler, right? And then you're repeating this process. Again, whatever is there, whatever you're experiencing, whether it be silence or bliss or something else, again, you're not letting yourself focus on it. And again, you're bringing your attention back to what feels like me. So your attention is moving to subtler and subtler points, basically, towards I, towards what feels like I. So you are effectively, hunting I just backwards. You're moving backwards towards I. So that's exactly the same process as self-inquiry, really. Yeah. So one falls towards, surrender, one is falling away from the world towards I. And in inquiry, one is like actively swimming towards I, you might say. But in the process, swimming away from the world and objects. Objects including, right, when you say the world, I mean including your thoughts and emotions and all of those things. Those are all part of the world, basically. So that process breaks the attachments, and eventually, it is a process of discrimination, of discernment, So eventually, when the attachments are weak enough, that process of differentiating between object and subject, right, which is both inquiry and surrender, involve differentiation. What is changing and what is not changing, basically, in this situation. What is out there and what is quote unquote in here, right? That's the process of discernment. So that process, when the attachments are weak enough, we'll see what's really going on, so to say. So that's why it's a complete path.
Yeah.
Any comments, questions on Zoom about your experience or questions about the practice?
Only 3 people are there.
Oh, okay. It's okay if there aren't any. I was just
There were
opening the
many
floor.
Just left.
Okay, let's do another 5 minutes.
Somebody is trying to
Oh,
talk, but they
someone's
are
trying to talk.
unknown. They are
You're on mute, I guess. Okay,
Yeah,
whoever's trying to
okay,
talk.
now, yeah, he's.
Yeah, I actually do have a question or a clarification. So, when doing self-inquiry, sometimes it's this just raw sense of being and feeling like I, but sometimes I'm noticing there's subtle imagery which I'm identifying with, and sometimes it's an amalgamation of both. I'm wondering if it matters what we focus on, or it's just about being honest in our present experience, whatever it is that we're identifying with.
Well, whatever is occurring, right, whether it be imagery or a so-called sense of presence, what you're always looking for is what's experiencing this. So that's why it's a movement, you see. Like, whatever you identify as presence or being or awareness, as soon as you think, oh, now I am aware of it, well, that is not, in fact, the real presence. It's not the real awareness. It's not the real being. It's actually a subtle mental feeling that you have labeled as presence. Why is that? Because, of course, because you're aware of it. So as you're aware of it, it's an object. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
imagery or quote-unquote sense of being, both are objects. And in both cases, you need to try to figure out, figure out is the wrong word, but really try to turn your attention towards whatever light is radiating behind them, basically, that illuminates them.
great. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. Because what happens is, these subtler and subtler feelings happen, right? That are harder and harder to differentiate, basically, because they feel more and more like me, like, oh, this is the core, right? But it's not the core. It's not the full core. It's not exactly the core. So just keep your eye on the prize, which is whatever is going on here is not it. It's I give this analogy sometimes of it's like walking. There's like the legend of Aladdin, right? Aladdin goes into the cave of treasures, and he's told, okay, at the end of the long hallway, okay, there is a small lamp. That's the lamp you want, okay? And he's walking along this hallway, and on either side there are treasures, okay, of various kinds. And as you walk along the hallway, the treasures become more and more gleaming, more and more beautiful, more and more tempting, right? He's told, don't touch these treasures, okay? What happens if you touch treasures when you die? I mean, what that really means in the practice terms is not that you literally die, but it means your mind gets sucked into a thought, okay? And you go back to the beginning of the cave, so to say, okay? What you have to do is you go all the way down, ignoring all the most gleaming treasures, until at the very end of the hall, there's a small, rusty lamp. That's what you want. That's the actual thing. So ignore everything from, the most crude pleasures to the most exquisite, most amazing, ecstatic, divine bliss. It's all object, all the way down. Huh?
So Akilesh, on the self-inquiry, if you can just comment on the subtlety of, it's a follow-up to this question where when you feel presence or you feel a sense of being, etc. At that point, do you renew the question, or do you, I suppose you don't go through a huge sort of an intellectual argument saying, this can't be thing because this is an object, so I'm not, so do you go through all that monologue, or to do that kind of a monologue, or do you, how do you sort of, at that point, how do you renew, it's almost like what you said yesterday, there's a constant vibration happening. Maybe you can comment on a little bit on that to see how do you, refine this practice.
Yeah, so
when I feel presence,
what do you
do exactly? Just comment on it.
Right, so, words are not bad, okay? We have these questions because they are helpful, right? So if you feel like you need to use words and remind yourself in words that, oh yes, well, this is an object, this is something I'm feeling, this can't be me, what am I actually, it's fine to do all that. But, also remember, right, that you don't need the words. If you don't need the words, you don't have to use the words. You definitely do not have to use the words. Use the words if you feel they're helpful. But anyway, the words are pointing you towards an attentional maneuver, right? It's moving your attention, right? So again, right, so again, if you're like listening in a song, right, and there's a lot of instruments, a lot of voices, a lot of things going on, and you're told, okay, there's one instrument in this mix. You're listening for that instrument. There's like 28 things going on, and you're listening to that one quiet instrument. It takes a lot of concentration to find that instrument in the mix and listen to that. Similarly, right? So if you're listening, you're like, I'm trying to identify it, I kind of hear it, but it's mixed with other things, I'm trying to focus in on that, right? How would you move your attention? How would you focus your attention, right? You're trying to, even though you're hearing the whole song, you're trying to attentionally clear out more and more and more. Like, this stuff is not it, this stuff is not it. Like, I'm trying to listen in on this particular piece. So similarly, with the presence coming, I feel a sense of presence, right? One has to try to recognize this is I am somehow still being experienced. I'm still somehow being experienced with respect to this. I gave an example to someone yesterday or the day before, which I also like, which is think of an old-fashioned slide projector. Okay, like where you put the transparency on, and then it projects the transparency. Okay, so imagine there's a projector like that, and you have a stack of 100 slides, okay, on top. Right now it's like this distorted mess on the screen, obviously, right? And your intention is look for the light. Look for the light, right? So you look down at the projector and, oh, the light is clearly here, right? And then you put your hand on the first slide, or whatever, transparency. It's obviously a transparency, it's not the light, right? So then you're removing it, right? And then now, again, you're looking for the light. Again, it's coming through 99 things now, right? And you're again putting your hand and you're seeing it's a transparency, you're moving it, right? And as you remove more and more and more and more transparencies, right, the image on the screen will get less and less distorted, right? And the remaining transparencies will seem more and more and more like the light. But they're not the light. But they'll seem more and more and more like the light, okay? So you just keep going like that, essentially. And as you get to subtler and subtler states, it is going to be harder and harder to differentiate. Yeah, where am I in this picture? Because it seems so clear, seems so empty, you know, but yet there you are experiencing the emptiness. So, you know, at a certain point, it's true, it will be very difficult to see where you are separate from this, but you just have to keep attempting it, basically. Like, I am somehow experiencing this. Where am I? That's the question. Where am I in this picture? This is the knock your head against this question, you know, if you're doing inquiry, you know. It's exactly right. Again, it's a beautiful metaphor, right? And again, in the story of Prahlada, right? Hiranyakashipu, right, is a monster who has these powers to evade death, right? He can't be killed inside or outside. He can't be killed at daytime or nighttime. He can't be killed by man or animal, right? What is this like? This is exactly like the ego, okay? Neither here nor there, right? It's evading. Like, where is it? Where is it, right? I'm looking, I see all the objects, but where am I, right? And as one clears the objects away, it becomes kind of a deeper and deeper mystery. Where am I in this, right? And actually, of course, right, the story goes that, you know, God is everywhere, actually. That's why you can't find him. He's not in a particular place. But anyway, you know, it's, so that's what you do, if that helps. Yeah.
Akilesh, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just two things. I liked one of the metaphors you gave much earlier, a long time ago, where you said it's like searching for the horizon when you're looking at, trying to look for the horizon and you see building, and then instead of seeing the building, you look beyond that when you search for the horizon.
Yeah.
And I really like that metaphor because in this metaphor of, the other metaphor of clearing away the sliding sheets, it seems like there's going to be this, after you clear away 100 sheets, there is a real pure light coming. But in the case of the horizon, I think you can't really look at the horizon properly because there's always a building always there.
Yeah, sure. Yes, you're right. So this idea of 100 sheets and then it's, yeah, sure. You can think of it that way. Yeah. I mean, it's
in this case of trying to look at the horizon, sometimes what really helps me a lot is that in these subtle states, what helps me is when I remember some intellectual concept, like I have like a set of words that I sometimes use, and I remind myself, oh yeah, I'm still here, and then that reminds me, that I have to refocus, because I sometimes don't refocus, and then I have to tell myself that I'm still here. I probably say that sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. That's great.
Yeah.
You can use a word to kind of bring you back to the fact that you're still here. That's right. It's great. Yeah.
Yes.
That's great.
You also said that it can be difficult to find out who you are in those situations, in subtle situations. But I have one of the things that helped me was that I don't know if it's correct, but I would say that I'm always at the base of my experience. Like it's beyond all the things. It's something that's other than what I perceive through the senses.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes, I mean, because that's exactly the principle behind surrender, right? So what you're saying is that your whatever is the base of the experiences that's not the experiences, right, is precisely the principle behind surrender, right? So one way of extrapolating that, which I sometimes say is that when you don't know where to go in self-inquiry, you can simply use the surrender approach, right? And whatever you're experiencing, withdraw your attention from that.
Yes.
That movement is in the direction of the self again. What would it mean to detach your attention from that, basically? Yeah.
Yes. And in the book Who Am I, in the question number 9, it says that if one inquires as to where in the body the thought I arises first, one would discover that it arises in the heart. And he also says later on that the I is the first thought to arise. It is the first thought of the mind, or the root of the mind. He says that. And then he also says that even if one constantly thinks constantly I, one will be led to that place. So here, heart means that seeming center of appearance of a center, right? Not the heart means like what it appears to be I, right? It's like the horizon example.
Yeah. I mean, Ramana uses this heart idea, and what he means by it is I.
Yes, got it. But then he also uses the heart in the reverse language also, where he says the heart is the capital S self.
Is the what now?
Is the true self.
Yeah, well, because the ego is nothing but the true self in the end. Ego stripped of attachments is the true self.
I think kind of tricky to get. Like he uses both those as.
Yeah. I mean, that's why. I mean, but this is a separate issue. This is Ramana's terminology. You know. Yeah. But it's Yeah. But do you have a question about it?
So I just had that one quick clarification was that he means that if you trace the ego to the pure I, that pure I is a portal to which the true self comes, and that portal is called the heart. Is that a way of thinking about it?
Yeah, I would just drop the heart from the vocabulary because it's just confusing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I never use that word. Yeah. I mean,
Okay. Got it.
yeah, I would just drop the heart. That's my personal preference. Yeah, because he just really means by it is I, basically. Yes, you go to the what feels like what's in here, which is the false I, and then when you hunt for the false I and you strip away all the associated thoughts, then there's nothing but that same false I, which is false in association with its masks. When stripped of masks, that same false I no longer feels like a separate I. That same false I reveals itself to be nothing other than the true self, basically.
Okay.
There's a radical difference if it's in association with thoughts, yeah. So,
If I might just ask,
Tell me.
yesterday during many of the satsangs, people describe, I'm hitting a wall.
yeah.
I mean, isn't that just another thought? And
Yes.
there's almost an expectation to find an object, and you're not finding the object, so you're saying you're
Yes.
hitting a wall.
Yes.
So that's a trap, actually, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, look, it's,
Is it probably not, is it helpful to language it as, hey, I'm hitting a wall?
I mean, it's what people,
What does it mean really? Because I don't even know what not hitting a wall means,
yeah, I mean,
In the sense,
well-
what am I because it's the unknown, and I don't know.
Well, I think what happens is that it's sort of like what you're talking about with this being and presence question, right? Like, kind of people feel at some point like, I don't know where to go next. Like I don't know how to. I'm looking for myself, and I don't know. I don't know how to get out of this. All I feel is there's some presence, and I don't know where I am.
So what's the problem in just continuing what you're saying?
Yeah. That's exactly what you
Why
must
should you language it
as a wall. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to language it as a wall, but that is people's experience, and that I use it because it just resonates with people's experience,
Okay.
right? So
because it doesn't get me anywhere type of implication, but I don't know right now. I don't know where I'm. What does getting somewhere mean? I just know that I have to do the practice.
no, exactly, that's right. I mean, you don't need to use that language if it doesn't appeal to you. But the point's simply that that if one feels that one is unable to get further, it's just not true, really. That you should recognize that doing the practice, even if it feels like I'm not going anywhere, it is doing something.
But what does that further or going anywhere even mean?
Well, further means that there's an experience of clarity, right? So there's we are looking for what we are, right? And so when it becomes clear what we are in its inexplicable way, then that will have been the thing that we are looking for, essentially.
So there's an underlying assumption that I don't have what I'm looking for. There is something that I'm looking for, and then there's a moment to that.
Yes,
there's
correct.
an assumption there.
Correct. That's right. So that's like I was saying yesterday, right?
Yeah.
This is a dualistic game.
Yeah,
we are playing a dualistic game, right? So we are looking for something, right? And we'll know when we found it. Even if it's quite different than what we think it was going to be, you know? And yeah, so yeah, we are looking, right? You're looking for what you are.
Yeah.
And all you see is objects. Where are you, right? So that has to resolve somehow.
Yeah. So till I continue to see objects, the game goes on.
Well, till you continue to not, in some sense, in some profound sense, know what you are, I would say, right? There's a
Which is again not an objectified knowledge.
Yes, it's not an objectified knowledge. That's
so,
correct.
yeah.
Well, so what sort of knowledge is it? It's,
Yeah.
you'll have to see for yourself.
So again, I guess for me at least, it seems like the practice in itself is all there is. Just keep sincerely to the practice, and there is no particular need to language that you haven't gotten somewhere, or
You can totally view it like that if you like. It's if it's compatible with doing the practice all the time, it's totally fine. Only thing is, it might be a little odd to view it that way, in the sense that, if you're doing the practice, you might ask, why am I doing this practice exactly, right? And so the reason given is, well, because you're trying to get somewhere. You're trying to get to a place where you don't have to do the practice anymore, basically, right? The effort of the practice is supposed to get you somewhere, namely to a place where effort is no longer required.
Yes, correct.
So, so in that sense, it's motivational for most people to think of it that way. But if it is motivational for you not to think of it that way, that's totally fine, you're quite right in a way that the practice is its own reward,
Right.
It's very true, actually. But at the same time, if you do the practice, it will eventually change its character, so that what seems to be like you've already experienced, right, now it's happening more automatically, and eventually it will be revealed that the practice has been going on always.
Mm-hmm.
You are the practice, not that you're doing the practice. So, yeah, I mean, yeah. I think it has some value, definitely, to think of there being a kind of goal that you're stretching towards, because it can keep a certain intensity. You see, you're going towards. But honestly, do what works for you. That's what I'll say. And surrender is also more associated with less of a goal, I would say. Self-inquiry has more of a goal to it.
Yes.
Surrender is a bit less of a goal, you might say. But even then, right? I mean, there is a process of discernment, right? One is surrendering, and you'll see, right? So you'll see when you do the practice, right? And you fall through into these moments of glimpsy moments, right? When the usual sense of ego falls away, right? This is not fully the self. This is just the reflection of the self. But still, right? There are these magical moments that will occur, and then you'll fall out of them, and then you'll want to get back to them. Why is it that I keep falling out of them, right? You'll want to know, right? How do I get to this forever, right? That desire will be there,
So, Akilesh, the qualities mentioned in the Gita for a person who's a person of wisdom, right?
Yes.
Those would be still good landmarks for somebody to use, rather than saying a wall is hit or not a wall is hit. At least it gives you a sense of, hey, how close you are to the finish line. Are you overcome by situations? Are you equanimous in pleasure and pain? Are you being able to be situationally independent and generally happy, being able to face all situations in an equanimous fashion? Are those not sort of things that tell you?
Yeah, sure. Yes. Generally, quieter mind is
you
associated.
feel you're going closer to it, as opposed to just thinking you've already come to a wall and nothing but a wall. That's all that. So I'm just thinking, there's a path here where you could say, hey, maybe I'm veering more and more. Maybe at times you're pretending to be what it would be like if you're the self, but then more and more you see, hey, certain things have changed in you.
Yes.
They're not overcome by situations anymore.
Yes.
Those are landmarks.
Yes. They are landmarks. Yes, that's right.
So you would agree that you would suggest that even reflecting on some of that, maybe.
It can be motivational. Yes, it can be motivational. Yes, 100%, absolutely. Yes.
But I guess their thoughts need to be inquired.
Their thoughts need to be inquired into. That's exactly right. Okay, but that's okay. You can have both. Views. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
You will see greater equanimity of mind. You will see less being less affected by situations.
Yes.
And often, you'll see, I mean, not that I can, there's no rules for all of this, it works differently in every case, right? But often what you will see is, along with your inner situation changing, you might notice your outer situation changing also, right? Because the two go in tandem, right? So things might alter in your life as you do the practice, because certain things will become less important.
Yeah.
And then there'll be a series of reactions based on that. So yes, you're quite right. That's
so
right.
To me, often those are like, say, how important is my need to be right, in an argument, or those little things that show me the mirror all the time.
Sure.
And,
Sure. Your attachments, exactly. Your attachments will decrease,
Many things
basically.
will become
Yes.
irrelevant.
Or my point of view is challenged, or I
Exactly.
feel diminished. Those kind of things. Traps that keep observing, even in a place of work, when you interact with people, places, situations. It's constantly a mirror being held to you.
Yeah. That's true. That's very true.
That's
keep us
keep you very
motivated.
honest in
Yeah.
that sense.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Mm.
It's a really good point. It's very true. Although we should keep in mind, right? So that said, right, that we shouldn't expect that all psychological idiosyncrasies will be fully washed away. Okay, to the extent that there's mind, there will be psychological idiosyncrasies to some extent, right? And that's why the scripture, the mythology, has examples of sages who have their own emotional peccadillos, right? Like someone like Durvasa, who gets angry, okay, or Yajnavalkya, who demands lots of gold in cows and stuff like that. Greed, arguably, right? Or you can say, even I love the example of Vashishta, okay, who is who in the Mahabharata, right, it's said that he has 101 sons, 100 of them are killed by demons, Rakshasas, okay?
Yeah.
And he gets, despite being Vashishta, who is obviously supremely enlightened sage, it said he gets extremely depressed. Suicidally depressed, in fact, okay? And it said he tries to kill himself in different ways. He tries to hurl himself from a cliff. He tries to drown himself in a river. He tries to throw himself in a fire, and so on, right? And he says because of his tapas, all his meditations, right? The elements refuse to harm him, and eventually he overcomes it. But the point is, right, that if we say that there is a mind, and the mind is subject possibly to these things, and that the truth is not, although it is very true that as one practices, one's attachments will diminish, and therefore that will lead to greater peace of mind, it will lead to less being affected by the external world. Nevertheless, right, we should keep in mind that what's really being gotten at here is not that the mind itself becomes completely free of all impurities, but rather that we are not the mind. That's the key point. In the process of this, the mind will have less impurity, but it may still have some impurity. So to say, if there is a mind, then it will have some impurity. And so just to be aware of that, right? That, and Ramana says this too, right? You cannot judge the inner spiritual status of someone from the external signs, unfortunately, because there may be contradictions in the outside. That's okay. That's just how it works. So only the inner person, only the person themselves is in a position to say, what's going on. But yeah, you're basically right. Overall, it's a very correct thing to say that, yeah, you can look back over time. Like, has my mind gotten quieter? Am I less affected by situations? Totally. Yeah, that's a great point.
Sashant, you want to ask something? You see that you're muted.
Sure.
Sure.
Just wanted to share one small thing connected to this, that I found that thoughts are a lot less sticky, as in if I watch a movie, I don't find myself recalling that movie again and again, or if I listen to music, I don't find myself caught up in the song lyrics or stuff like that. Or even if I get in an argument with someone, I don't find myself recalling statements made, and there's a little bit of satisfaction. But I think I still have a long way to go because I've never come to the point of what you mentioned as a glimpse. So yeah, but that's just I think that's a tiny bit of peace I've got.
Good. That's right. Yeah, exactly. It should be treasured. That's right. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do another round of 5 minutes. All right, well, thank you all for coming. We have 2 more sessions this evening and tomorrow, so.
Thank you.
Tomorrow no meditation.
This is
Tomorrow, no meditation, just in the afternoon, evening, I should say,
Evening,
5 o'clock,
5 to
8
8,
o'clock,
yeah.
5 to 8 p.m. Pacific time.
And today is 7 to 8:30.
And today is 7 to 8:30 p.m. exactly.
It's normal time, right?
No, every day is at some time. Yeah. PST. Okay,
So
bye.
the Upanishadic knowledge gives